there are many safe cities to live in. I live in one of the safe cities, Santiago de Querétaro. Mérida is known as a very safe city. There are many options for you. So if safety is your number one concern, as it should be, you can do your research and learn about some of the safe cities. Number two, the best advice that I would offer is make a list similar to what I did of things that are important to you. So you understand your preferred lifestyle preferences. What is important to you? What matters to you? What climate matters to you? Be very intentional about this new life that you're creating. Always think to yourself, how can I engage in the best version of myself in this new country?
Welcome to the Ronin Mindset. My name is Steve Didier, and this is the podcast for you if you are looking to break free of that 9-to-5 grind, get out, travel the world, become an expat, a global citizen, digital nomad, whatever it is that calls you. This podcast is going to help you find your way. So today, we've got an absolutely fantastic guest. Asha Farrah is an expat and legal resident living in Santiago de Querétaro, Mexico. Originally from Harlem, New York, she has traveled to nearly 30 countries and 5 continents. She is the founder of her relocation company, Mexpat Dreamers, who help aspiring expats with the Mexico relocation process. Asha Farrah, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me today, Steve. I'm excited to be here.
I am excited as well, especially when we're talking about Mexico. Mexico has a very special place in my heart. Anyways, it's the first place that I moved to when I left the States back in 2013. So it's got a kind of a soft spot with me. So I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Feel the same way.
So how you are in Querétaro?
Yes, I'm in Santiago de Querétaro.
Okay.
So that's located in central Mexico. For those who may not know, it's about a 3-hour drive from Mexico City.
Okay. How did you end up there? It's not a a typical touristy hotspot like Playa del Carmen or Puerto Vallarta or Cabo or even San Miguel de Allende is very well known with expats and retirees, but Querétaro,
Great
not so
question.
much.
I did not want to end up where all the other people were. I was looking for more cultural immersion, Steve. So I wanted to learn about the culture of Mexico. I wanted to push myself to speak Spanish every day. I knew that if I was relocating from the States, that I wanted to have a different experience. I didn't want to bring my same mindset with me. So I was ultimately looking for a place where I could thrive in that way culturally. Now, I chose Santiago de Querétaro because prior to moving to Mexico, I was coming from Washington, D.C. And so one thing that I did love about Washington, D.C. is it was full of amenities. Okay, you have a lot of museums there, arts and culture, live music, sports, all the things that I'm attracted to. And population size, I felt comfortable in a city that size because I'm originally from New York City, as you said. And so
Yeah.
when I started thinking about the things that I loved about DC, I wanted to find some of those similarities in, again, the culture. And so that's what Querétaro brought to me. And what I did not love was the weather. I was tired of the snow, the cold. And so the great thing about Querétaro or areas in central Mexico like Querétaro is called eternal spring. So year round, it's about 75 degrees, a little higher. It's sunny almost every day. So that's a great element for my mental health and those considering relocating here. So those are the reasons why I chose Querétaro.
Okay. Now, did you find that out by research, or were you just traveling and kind of went through there and said, "Hey, I love this spot"?
I would say it was a combination, similar to you, my love affair started with Mexico very early on. I'm talking like 2008, 2007. First experience with Mexico, like many others, was spring break. I came down here, like many do, to Cancun for the beaches, the parties. But what happened was I took a day trip to Chichen Itza, and that's when it all changed. Because I was like, people talk
Oh,
about the beaches of Mexico, the parties in Mexico, but the culture and the history are not talked about enough, Steve. And you can probably agree with me. When you
100%
learn,
agree.
yeah, when you learn about the culture and the history, it changes you, it shifts you, and it
Yeah.
reshapes you to want to learn more. So although I was young, I was on a spring break trip. That day trip, I was like, okay, wait, I got to come back. So I continued to travel to Mexico. And as I became more comfortable, I expanded where I traveled to. I realized, hey, Mexico is not just beaches and parties. There are 32 states here, Steve. So I got to get out the confines of the Playa del Carmen's Mexico cities. And so I expanded my reach. And that opened me up. And so to date, I've traveled to 15 of the 32 states. And I can
Oh
tell you
wow.
they're fantastic, Steve.
I don't know how many. I haven't really bothered counting the states. I know I'm in double digits somewhere, but I got a lot of them under my belt because I drove from Las Vegas down to Playa, so I
Yeah.
got to see quite a
So
bit.
you know how rich they are and how different they are. You know, no state is similar to the other. You don't go to one state and say the food was the same, the people were the same. Even the way they speak Spanish is different, you know?
Hmm. Yep. I noticed that when I got here to Monterrey as well because it's a different dialect completely
Yep,
than Playa del Carmen and
of course.
different in Cabo, everything. So, have you been to Puebla?
Yes, I went to Puebla this summer and had a great time. I loved it because of how rich, number one, I'm a foodie. So no one talked about the mole. I've been to Oaxaca and they claim that they had the best mole.
Puebla has got the mole
But
locked.
I think I'm gonna go on record here and say it's Puebla.
Yeah, yeah. No, I would agree. That's like their signature dish. There was something else there that I tried that was very, very local, and I cannot remember the name of it. But yeah, absolutely fantastic. The mole there is so rich.
So rich. And I'm not even a chocolate person. So when they mentioned it had like undertones of chocolate, I was like, yeah. But when I tasted it, sweet, savory, I mean, hands down a winner.
Yeah, yeah. I would go to Puebla just for the mole. I really liked Puebla though. It was such a fantastic town, and they had that active volcano
Yep.
right out on the outskirts. So I remember we were looking out the hotel room, and I'm like, that mountain is smoking. She's like, oh, that's a volcano. I'm like, oh, okay,
What does
good.
that mean? Am I in trouble? Yeah, for sure. I
Yeah,
think Puebla is one of those underrated cities, Steve. You'll probably agree with me. It gets lost in the top cities. You know, when people talk about like food, art, culture, people bring up Oaxaca a lot, which definitely should be brought up. But I feel like Puebla doesn't get its due, and it's ironic because that's where a lot of the history is in Mexico. You know, when you think of some of the things that I experienced while I was there, I went to some of the underground tunnels where you got to see where some of the soldiers passed by during the, I believe, Mexican Revolution. I could be wrong, but
yeah,
it's just to experience that, to feel that reignited. It's past like, oh, Mexico is a cool place to live. It's like, no, Mexico is rich. It's rich in
yeah.
culture. It's rich in history. I feel
Yep.
like that's not discussed enough.
No, I would agree. And I had the opportunity when I was there to take one of they have like it's a tour bus where they narrate everything that happened with those big battles and everything throughout Puebla, and they go through deep in
Yes,
the
that's what I was
history.
referencing. Yeah.
Yeah, it
And you
was
hear like
amazing.
the gunpowder, you hear all of the things reenacted and you feel transported to that.
Yeah, it was a absolutely fascinating for me. And another thing I liked about Puebla too is they've got a good coffee culture there too. Some amazing little coffee shops, like little private ones. It was fun.
Yeah. And I would even say too, like I think they have a unique foodie scene because it's not just like the local culture scene. I was able to experience different food. Like I ended up going to a Nigerian restaurant on a whim and the food was fantastic. So it's also a mix of cultures. And that
Yeah,
restaurant had both Nigerian and Mexican food. So it was nice to see cultures merging there. So I would definitely say for your listeners, you know, Puebla is that foodie town. If you are a foodie, you want to try true, authentic Mexican food, put Puebla on your list.
oh, for sure. And Puebla was not on my radar at all. I ended up there almost, it was a year ago. It was like, it's December, it was 24, it was November of 2023. My girlfriend does like bikini and fitness competitions, and
Yeah.
she had a pro qualifier down there. So I'm like, all right, yeah, let's go. And
Right.
I knew nothing about Puebla. I just ended up there, and then we did all this stuff. I tried the mole and everything. I was just like, oh, this place is
Sold.
amazing. Sold, sold. Yeah, absolutely amazing.
Same.
Well, I love a lot of the different aspects of Mexico. Um, what is your favorite thing? What was it about Mexico that made you just like, this is my spot. This is where I belong?
Yeah, I think what made me choose Mexico, and this will probably be a surprise to many listening, I would say the first thing is the people. The kindness of the people. As you mentioned in the introduction, I've traveled a lot. And in my experience, you have different interactions when you go to different places. You know, you never know the perception. But as I've been here and I've traveled through the many states, I mean, the humanity of the Mexican people shines so bright. And that's
Yeah.
something I think that's underrated about this culture. You know, you are welcomed with open arms. Like I said, sometimes it's just me going to these cities like Puebla. People come up to me because they're uncertain if I speak Spanish, and they always ask me, "Are you okay?" I was in Morelia maybe 3, 4 weeks ago, and someone came up to me at a restaurant I'm eating, and she's like, "Are you okay?" in Spanish. And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." She's like, "Okay, just making sure, that humanity, that kindness, that really shines through as I think the underbelly of who the Mexican people are. And that really attracted me to this country. You can find a lot of countries where the food is good. You can find a lot of countries that have great beaches. You know, those things are not as hard
Right.
to find. But to find rich humanity, kindness, I think elements that we've lost a little bit as a people recently, to find that, that is really attractive.
I would wholeheartedly agree with that. And I think you find I think you find a lot more of that specifically in the non-tourist areas.
Agreed. Agreed. Which is why I encourage people, when I work with a lot of my clients through Mexpat Dreamers, my company Mexpat Dreamers, I encourage people to look past where you've heard of. Look past the Playa del Carmen's, the Mexico Cities, the Cabo. That doesn't mean you're not going to have a good experience. That does not mean it's not going to be rich in all the things you're looking for. But when I'm talking about quality of life, quality of people, I agree with you, Steve. You want to look outside of those obvious expat digital nomad cities.
Yeah. You get a lot more of the, I don't know, everybody trying to, not everybody, but a lot of people trying to take advantage of the tourists and all those
To
different
tell
kind
you
of things.
something,
Yeah, sell you something, whether it's drugs or whatever. So, that can kind of affect people's image of it. But when you get away from the touristy stuff, that's when you experience the real culture and the real genuine warmth of the Mexican people, I believe. And at least in my experience.
I agree. I think it is the fabric of who Mexican people are. I think when you go to any, tourist city, you think of Europe and you go to the obvious places like Rome and stuff, you do encounter that I'm trying to sell you a tour. I'm trying to sell you things that maybe are, not so great. But when you
Oh,
go
yeah.
outside of those places, that's when again, you find that humanity and the fabric and the culture of the people. So I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah. So let's talk about your company, Mexpat Dreamers.
Yeah.
Uh, I love the concept, and we talked a little bit beforehand, and I was actually considering setting up something like that. You specialize in helping people immigrate or expatriate or whatever you want to call it, move to Mexico and jump all those different hurdles like residency and all that. I was going to do that, but I honestly, I still love Mexico. Don't get me wrong, but my heart is in Southeast Asia. So I
Yeah.
took more of a, okay, I'm going to do more of a global lifestyle design service instead of just focusing on Mexico.
Smart.
But I love the idea. How did that come about?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I created my company, Mexpat Dreamers, because I recognized that when it was time to relocate, most of us are on social media and we're scrolling through and we're seeing these beautiful pictures of Mexico. We see people on beaches, we see people in coffee shops, but we don't see the how, right? And the how is very important to get you from where you are in the States or Canada or Europe to Mexico. And so what I mean by the how is the logistics. How do I obtain residency? Do I even qualify for residency? Location selection. We just had a great conversation about some of our favorite places. You want to find the right location so that you can thrive based on your lifestyle preferences. That's what I focus on, because every place is not for everybody. You know what I mean? You might not be a big city person. You may not like the beach. You may not like the heat. You may not like the cold. There are opportunities for everyone. So I almost help you learn to date where you're looking to move. Just like you don't date the first guy or woman you meet that's
Right.
interested. It's the same for the place you're looking to relocate. So you may come in and say, Asha, I'm thinking about Mexico. I'm a city person, so I'm moving to Mexico City. Well, I bring up the pros and cons. How are you with your respiratory issues? Does
Yep. How are you going to deal
traffic
with
bother
altitude?
you?
Yeah. Yeah.
I ask you those things to get a feel for who you are. So I'm learning my clients almost again like a dating experience. Once I learn you, I end up making the top 3 cities or beach towns right for you based on your lifestyle preferences. Do you like to exercise a lot? Are you a vegan? Or, do you have different dietary preferences? Those dictate the right places for you. I
Yeah.
also discuss healthcare. I never saw that information online, Steve. What happens if you get sick, but it's not, an emergency room situation? Maybe you ate something and it's been 3 days and my stomach has not come back to normal, which is common when you first arrive.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I had some experiences because when in playa, there's a lot of different things you can be exposed to, like dengue fever. I had
Exactly.
that. I picked up a case of, I didn't know it at the time, but it was typhoid. And I was at my house, and it was like 3 days, and I was feverish to the point of delirium, sweating. You wake
Yep.
up and the bed is just wet. I was like,
Wet.
after it didn't break, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna go in. So I found a pharmacy similaris, and they always have the little
Mm-hmm.
the medical office next to it. And
Consulto
doctors,
médico.
yes, exactly, 35 pesos for a
Yep.
doctor consult, which is about $2
Yeah, give
ish.
or take $2.
And so I went in there, and at the time I had just moved to Mexico. I was there a couple months, so my Spanish was non-existent,
Terrible, right?
horrible. And the doctor was so nice, but he didn't speak any English, so we just worked
Yeah.
through it. And we went out, and he was helping me get the right medications from the pharmacy, and he's talking to me, and I'm delirious, and I'm trying to
Right.
focus on what he's saying, and I kept hearing like familia. I'm like, he's asking me about my family. I'm like, is he asking for next of kin? Like, is this like, am I in
Is
trouble
this
here? Like, I don't
dire?
know what's going on. I I called a friend of mine that didn't live too far away from there, American dude, but fluent in Spanish, and I was like, Chris, I might be in trouble. I don't know. If you come down here for a second, he's like, yeah, I'll be down. And he wasn't. No, there was nothing bad. I had typhoid. He was giving me the pills for it. He was just asking me if I had any family there, what
Yeah.
brought me there, just chit chatting. But I was like, am I gonna
Yeah.
die?
Yeah, so those things are crucial. What is your level or need of public transportation? Elevation
Yeah.
can be an issue for a lot of clients. People don't realize there are cities in Mexico that have high elevation. I live in one. Querétaro has a high elevation. So when you arrive and you're not coming from a previous city like I was, that was much flatter, you can experience elevation sickness. So that means dizziness, you don't feel your best, headaches, things like that. That can last up to a few weeks. So those are things that I kind of walk my clients through. The apartment rental process. You know this, Steve. There are different guarantees that you need living in another country like Mexico versus when you're in the States and they run your credit. So I walk
Yeah.
my clients through the whole relocation process from start to finish.
That's super helpful because there's not a lot of places online where you can find comprehensive information. And then even if you do find it, it may not fit exactly what you're looking for. Because like you said,
Or it
everybody's
can be
different
outdated.
and it can be outdated. Exactly. That's an amazing service. What does your typical client look like? Are they mostly retirees or do you get from all walks of life that are coming
You
down?
know what? It's been the gambit. So I do a lot of business with retirees who are looking at retiree locations like San Miguel de Allende, of course,
Yeah.
that speak to retirees. But then I'm also seeing a lot of my clients, maybe between 25 to 45 years old because the virtual work has picked up. So a lot of people have taken their jobs from where they are in both Canada and the US, and they've come down here to work remotely. So I work with families. I explain the school systems here and how to enroll your kids in the school system, or if you homeschool, how to help your kids interact and become comfortable, with the local kids here. What are some of the ways that you can connect? Because I always tell people, and you will agree, family is the backbone of Mexico. It's
Yep.
very different here. Family is the number one priority. And so I have a lot of people who come down here as family units as well. So it's really a mix, and I'm able to help people navigate who are just solo people looking to roam. I'm able to help families who are looking to plant roots, and then I'm able to help retirees who are saying, this may be the final best chapter of my life. How do I make it so?
Yeah, that's wonderful. Because Mexico has so much to offer for different
Yeah.
people, but retirees especially, when you start looking at things in the US like cost of living, it
Healthcare.
is healthcare, everything out of control. And if you can, it's almost impossible to retire in the US on your Social Security or something like that.
No,
Whereas
it's not. Yeah.
especially with the exchange rate right now, your money goes a lot farther
Yeah.
in Mexico.
Yeah. And that I'm glad you touched on that, Steve, because that's one of the things I actually was speaking about that to a client yesterday. Understanding that Mexico has a floating currency. And so what does that mean for you? How do you make your money work for you? What is the advantage? Well, if you understand how to strategize around it, you can actually gain more than less. You know what I mean? And so that's something to understand for your listeners. If you're considering moving to Mexico or really any country, understand the currency. And
Yeah.
then once you understand the currency, strategize around it. So if you are someone that is a retiree looking to relocate to Mexico, as Steve said, it is way more beneficial for you, and the quality of life is higher for you. I find a lot of my retirees that I work with, that I keep in touch with, they start off and they feel like, maybe they've had some illnesses or they don't walk as well. And then after being down here a few months, the quality of life has redeemed them. They feel stronger. They feel like they want to be outdoors more. Mexico is an outdoorsy culture. So that's
Yeah.
something else to keep in mind. People love to be out.
Yeah. And I've noticed that even like moving to like when people move to Playa, I watch people move to Playa, almost inevitably within the first 2 or 3 months they drop 10 or 15 pounds.
Easy, easy.
And that's with eating. That's
Yeah,
with eating. But
yeah,
that
yeah.
like
No diets included.
yeah, no diets included. They just drop the weight. Now there's a lot of different reasons for that. Playa is a very walkable city.
Yep.
But yeah, you're outside a lot more and you're doing things.
Yeah.
And that's really beneficial overall for your mental health, your physical health, everything across the board.
Emotional health.
Emotional health. And it's good for your emotional health if you're not stressing over making every last penny
Every
count
cent
either.
stretch. Yeah.
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 I agree.
So what if somebody wants to reach out to you? Normally I do this at the end, but I'll give you, if somebody's looking for Mexpat Dreamers, is that the website or how do they reach out to you?
Yeah, you can reach out through the website. I'm also really active on social media. So Instagram is my preferred platform. I also invite your audience to check out my Instagram. I also chronicle my life here because that's something that I did not see. On social media prior to, I saw people with the highlight reels, but I'm just showing you day to day. Maybe going to a plant-based restaurant because I'm plant-based, checking out a soccer game we were just talking about before we started this podcast. Sports is also the fabric of Mexican culture. So feel
Yeah.
free to check out my Instagram at Mexpat Dreamers. You can reach out or DM me there. You can reach out on my website. I have an inquiry form, and I'm happy to speak to you about your personal relocation goals.
Yeah. If somebody needs a little assistance, that's the way to go. Get somebody who knows the ropes, has the
Yeah,
connections, and can get things done. That's the way to do it. So with as far as like just global travel, obviously we know Mexico is your favorite.
yeah.
Where else have you enjoyed in the world?
Yeah, I've enjoyed a lot of places. So one of my favorite places was Turkey. Turkey
Really?
blew my breath away. I was able to spend some time on the coast. That coast is absolutely stunning. I'm a beach lover. Even though I live in the city, I'm a beach lover.
The
So I
center of the
love,
country.
right. The hospitality in Turkey, excuse me, was up there with Mexico. People were extremely kind to me. The warmth of the people. So that was one of my favorite places. I'm in agreement with you. Number three is definitely Thailand, the land of the smiles.
Yeah.
People, beaches, food, cities, culture, you name it. It checks
Thailand's got it
all the
all.
boxes, Steve.
It's the only box that it does not check.
Mhm.
And I was in Thailand for a significant amount of last year. You could not find any Mexican food in Thailand that was worth
No.
anything. And I was dying for some tacos. And I found a Mexican restaurant in, oh, it was like Koh Samui. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna try this. And
It was terrible.
no, it was all right, but it certainly wasn't Mexican food. They just something they called Mexican. It was good
That's
food,
funny.
but yeah, it certainly wasn't like going down here. I've got taco shops all around me and street food and like this whole area. This is super walkable too, where I'm at. I'm in Monterey, but technically I'm in San Nicolas de los Garza,
Mhm.
so it's like a suburb of Monterey. And I can walk out and get just absolutely fantastic food no matter which way I walk, and I love it.
I'm in agreement with you. The food is great in Mexico. And what I like what you just said, like going back to like cost of living, if that's a consideration for your audience, in terms of food, you don't have to spend a lot. Street food is really good. And people always ask me, well, how do I know, if I'm going to get sick? Rule of thumb always is go to the cart with the longest line. That's always the rule of thumb. But I recommend from the tamales, atoles, we're in ponche season. There's so many sopes, gorditas. I mean, try them all. And they're
All of
very
them.
inexpensive, Steve. I know you can agree with me.
Yeah. Have you been to Monterey?
You know what? I've only passed through Monterey, so I've only spent a day in Monterey. So I wouldn't say I've experienced it.
Okay. And this is being that you're kind of a plant based, it
Yeah,
would probably not appeal to you that much, but Monterey is the whole culture around food here is carne.
yeah.
You walk down the streets, they're like you walk down the street at night, every fourth or fifth house, they're going to be outside having cervezas and grilling. Everybody's got their grills out. It smells just amazing around here all the time. And I'm a big meat eater.
Oh, okay.
So one of the local things here that is really good and people will come from all over is cabrito, which is goat.
Yep.
And it is something amazing. Something you've got to try. If you're a meat eater,
Yeah.
that's something
Yeah.
you got to try.
I see it too when I pass by. Like I see them carving down the meat, and it smells amazing. I just like quickly walk by.
Oh, I don't know how you do it because so much in Mexico is meat
It's
based.
tough.
Yeah,
It's
I can
tough. I do
imagine.
eat fish, and I eat marlin, which is big here in Mexico. Marlin is like the bacon of the sea, so it is very top tier. So I have a lot
Yeah,
of the marlin tacos.
bacon of the sea. I haven't heard that before.
Yeah, the bacon of the sea. Don't sleep on it.
Oh, no, marlin is good. There's I don't know, I'm forgetting. There's a place I go to in Playa. It's kind of on the outskirts, but their signature dish is marlin tostadas.
Ugh.
So good. I need a trip back there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What other beach
Just the
places have
food.
you been to? Beach towns have you been to in Mexico outside of Playa?
All of them are on the Riviera Maya, of
Okay.
course. From the whole Yucatan Peninsula,
Yeah.
because I lived over there, so I've been from south to north. Uh, been to Vallarta, Cabo. I have not been to Oaxaca, and I heard that's just
That's what I do in the
amazing.
summers.
Yeah, Oaxaca is the place,
Costa
huh?
Oaxaca. My birthday's in August, so I spend my summers there. And the beaches are top tier, especially if you love to snorkel and dive.
I don't dive. I do like snorkeling.
Yeah,
But I think it's from my time in the military. I've got like a perforated eardrum or something like that. So
understood.
diving doesn't work for me.
Snorkeling
People are
is
like, oh,
fine.
just
That's what I do.
what's that?
I said snorkeling is fine. That's what I do. And you
Yeah,
can see a lot of animals. Like we've seen spotted eagle rays, we've seen manta rays just by snorkeling.
yeah. Especially, like again, I spent a lot of my time in the Riviera Maya,
Right.
but if you go over to Cozumel, the fish and Isla Mujeres, like I've been all over
Yeah.
that area. It's just
Yes.
absolutely fantastic. Fantastic.
Yes. Yes. I love
That's the
our
thing
love
about
of
Mexico.
Mexico.
Well, that's the thing about Mexico, like, and you kind of referenced this before, but it is so geographically diverse. You've got
Yep,
snowy mountains, you've got tropical jungles, you've got deserts, you've got you name it, you've
they
got
have
it.
it.
So, yep. So you
Yeah,
can
it's
find, I
rich
think
in
there's like,
landscape for sure.
yeah, is it like six separate different, like what they consider the, they categorize the different climate zones? I think there's like six separate
I
ones
believe there
in
are
Mexico.
six. I was just telling you before we started, I spent some time in a Christmas village this week and it was encased in a forest. I mean, the weather was cold and cool. Like, it was just like, wow, I can't believe the amount of landscape that exists here.
Tell me about that Christmas village. You said it's a Christmas village. It's open 20 or 365 days a year, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it's located in the state of Michoacan. It was we took the bus system, so it was about 2.5 hours to get there, which is not bad. And so they have two Christmas villages that are decorated in all things Christmas. They do light shows where they do video mapping, which in Mexico is very big.
Yeah.
So light shows, video mapping, all Christmas music. They even have snow blowers that they they have on a
I
time
love
loop.
it.
Like, it's really nice.
That's awesome. I'm gonna have
Yeah.
to check that out. I have not done that. I haven't done the La Coco.
Which one?
Was it? Oh no, which one is it that where they have the tequila and all the boats? It's in Mexico City, and I'm drawing a
There's
blank on
the
this as
tequila
well.
town in Jalisco, like not too far from Guadalajara.
Yeah, yeah. That. Why am I drawing a blank? It's gonna come to me as soon as we get off the podcast. I know. But they have the theme park that
Hmm.
mimics that in Playa. I've been to that one, but I haven't been to the one I believe it's in Mexico City. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's just so much.
It's
There's
so
just
much
so
to
much in
do.
Mexico. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
So much
so
to
much.
do.
So for somebody who is toying around with the idea, maybe they're a retiree or just wanting to get out, they can work remote. How would you recommend, outside of contacting you, but how would you recommend them kind of starting that process of
Yeah.
switching everything over? Because it can be a little challenging both from a mindset standpoint, because obviously in the US, you get programmed
Yes.
with a lot of stuff. A lot of it's fear-based programming or whatever. So I know when I work with people who are looking to move overseas, a lot of that is like, okay, dispelling a lot of myths or the ingrained truths that they think are going on. So
Yeah.
somebody who's thinking about moving to Mexico specifically, what would you say their first step should be?
Yeah, I like what you just said and how you brought in that question. So the first thing to understand is, again, Mexico has 32 states. So one of the, things that we always hear or that I'm asked is about safety. Safety comes up immediately before people even want to commit to the idea of Mexico. So understand that there are 32 states. And then think back to your life in the US. There may be areas in the US, like I lived in Washington, D.C. I would not maybe go to Southeast DC after a certain time of night. It's
Right.
going to be similar, but that may be in relation to different cities and states. And I always tell people the cities and states that may have some trouble would not be cities and states you would be attracted to as a foreigner. You don't have the language skills, you don't have the cultural immersion skills to live in those cities. Those are
Yeah.
not cities that are attracting people looking to move from the US to Mexico. So that's number one. Number two, understanding your research. There are many safe cities to live in. I live in one of the safe cities, Santiago de Querétaro. Mérida is known as a very safe city. There are many options for you. So if safety is your number one concern, as it should be, you can do your research and learn about some of the safe cities. Number two, the best advice that I would offer is make a list similar to what I did of things that are important to you. So you understand your preferred lifestyle preferences. What is important to you? What matters to you? What climate matters to you? Be very intentional about this new life that you're creating. Always think to yourself, how can I engage in the best version of myself in this new country? So that's the second piece of advice. And then the last piece of advice is learn the culture of Mexico. Understand what's important to Mexicans, family, things like that. Because when you get here, you're ingraining in their culture. You're not making the
Right.
rules, they make the rules. So that's the
Right.
top three pieces of advice I would offer.
Yeah, I like number three. I like that a lot because I see too many. well, it's not that many, but there's enough and they're loud enough that it gets annoying. The Americans who come down and they expect everything in Mexico to operate like it does in the US. It's not going to happen. It never has. It never will. Get used to it. There's pros and cons to every place, and you're going to have some patience.
Yeah. As
You're going
they're
to
having
have some
patience
patience.
with you, keep in mind that
Exactly.
as well.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
because if you're not fluent in Spanish, it, that
That's a
can,
setback for them.
it's a setback for them. Yeah, exactly. Because that's the language here. It's kind of incumbent on you to get at least a little bit.
Yeah.
Don't have to be fluent, but if
No,
you, and that's one thing about Mexicans too, is they are so gracious. If you are trying to speak the language, love it.
it is
They
enough for them.
absolutely love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
It
love
is
that,
enough.
especially people from the US would actually put in the effort to learn Spanish. Even if it's not perfect, they absolutely love it. And my Spanish is far from perfect.
Yeah, I agree. And I would add on to that, be comfortable being uncomfortable. When I first moved here living in a Spanish speaking Mexican city, you can imagine the number of mistakes I made with my language. And when you're new, you make mistakes on things like hello, like seriously, because when you engage with people and they're engaging back, you don't realize your brain is not catching up as quickly as they're speaking. So you can make so many mistakes. So you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And what I mean by that to your audience is it's okay to make a mistake. Laugh at yourself. Like the things that
Yeah.
I have said in Spanish that I did not mean, I'm like, I need to laugh because otherwise this is embarrassing. So I'm gonna move on.
Yep. Yeah,
And I know you've
I've
been
made a
there.
bunch of those. Uh-huh. There were two in particular. One, I asked the waiter, because it was time we wanted to get the bill, and instead of asking for the bill, I was like, propina, por favor. He was like, sure. I'm asking the waiter for a tip. I'm like,
Mhm.
damn it. But you
Mhm.
gotta laugh at yourself. He didn't
Mhm.
take offense. He thought it was funny as hell. So,
Mhm.
but then the other one is even if you do know Spanish, there are things in Mexico that are completely different.
Yep.
For example, the word coger. In Mexico, that does not mean to fetch or to get. It's something completely different. You guys can Google that if you want. I'm not going to go into details.
But it's true that does happen. Like you ask the waiter for a tip after he serviced you. Like
Yeah, yeah. But I don't care. I can laugh at myself. I'm in on the
same.
joke. I don't get, oh, like, it's just fun. We had some fun with it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Again, Mexican people are so gracious. If you're trying to learn the language, it's not like going to Spain.
No.
Spain, I don't know if you've met, but if you mess up speaking Spanish in Spain, they get like angry with you.
The
Like,
patience is not there. Yeah.
no, oh, it pissed me off so bad.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think especially for those looking to move, it's their first time moving from the US or Canada. I think Mexico is also a great starter country because as you shared, the people are kind and they have patience. So you're able
Hmm.
to learn yourself and you're able to learn another country. Because understand there is going to be a transformation that comes within you when you move abroad. You're
Yeah.
experiencing something completely new. All of your senses will be awakened. As you can see, Steve and I have been talking about the food, the culture, the landscapes, the weather. All of that is going to enrich you and then change you and then reshape you. And so it's a great country to start out with if you're considering relocation. This is a great starter country.
I also would agree with that wholeheartedly because there is some drastic differences, don't get me wrong, but unlike, say, Thailand, at least you can read the stuff. Even it might be in a different language, but you can tell what the letters are.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that are different. You go to a major town, you're going to find Walmart, you're going to find Sam's Club, got a
Hmm.
Costco in Cancun. You're like, there's all the stuff that gives it a little bit of familiarity to American.
Hmm.
So it's enough that, it's definitely different, but there's enough of the same stuff that it's a easier transition than going someplace like Thailand or Vietnam or someplace like that where it's completely different.
I agree. And I think once you've stretched yourself, like I have clients sometimes that will spend a year in a more digital nomad, expat friendly city. gain their language skills, increase their language skills, their familiarity with Mexico, and then relocate to a different city, maybe that stretches them and brings more culture. So that's
Yeah.
something else to consider, as well. You can get your feet wet and start out in a more expat friendly city, like you mentioned in Playa, Steve. But then after you kind of get your feet wet and learn the ropes, get your residency, understand how things work, you can then stretch yourself a little further. You're not married to anything, you're
Right. Right.
relocating.
And you can use a place like Playa as like a home base to
Yep.
visit other areas in Mexico because
Yes.
getting around within Mexico is very cheap. You get Viva
Yeah.
Aerobus or something like that. You can get someplace for $50.
Yeah, and very accessible. That's
Yeah.
another thing I share when we talk about transportation needs with my clients. Obviously, when you live in cities, you're going to have Uber and what's known as Didi, which is very similar. And then you'll have your taxis. But what's also nice is they have like what's a luxury bus system here. For us in Querétaro, we have Primera Plus, ATN, and some other companies that are very reasonable. So when you live in areas like myself in central Mexico, you're able to travel around to nearby states very affordably and quickly. So I can get to maybe 5 or so states under 4 hours on a bus. So that's also something to think about if you like to travel, making sure you're by neighboring states, or like Steve said, if you're in Playa, you want to travel to the Yucatan Peninsula, there is that option as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's important to know because there's a really good public transportation system as far as
Yeah.
buses.
Yep.
And if you want to go to airports,
Yeah.
flying around in the country is so cheap.
Yeah, flying domestically in Mexico is cheap. It's affordable. There are a great number of flights to be able to move and fake.
Yeah, 100%. Getting around in Mexico is very easy and very reasonable. So
Yeah,
if you do end up someplace, I highly encourage anybody to check out all the different places that Mexico has to offer.
I
Some
agree.
places, obviously,
Yeah, we
like you
can
said
leave off the
earlier,
list.
yeah, check like I'm not going to be going and hanging out in Culiacan for any time soon, but
Right, right, exactly.
there's
But there are so many other places. I mean, I'm 15 states in, and I already have like 4 or 5 for next year. Like.
where's next on the list?
Oh my gosh. So Veracruz is next year. Chiapas is next year. Some of the beach areas in Sonora are next year. So just to name a few. I haven't
Okay.
done Huasteca Potosina in San Luis Potosi. I've been to San Luis Potosi, which is a
Okay.
beautiful architectural city to your audience who's listening. That's another thing about Mexico. If you are an architecture person, if you love and appreciate architecture, Mexico is also rich in that. A lot of Baroque, beautiful architecture in central Mexico.
Yeah, a lot of like Spanish influence in the architecture. It's
Yeah,
beautiful. And then
yeah,
of course you have all the different historical and ruin sites like Chichen Itza you mentioned. You get the ruins, so many Mayan ruins
yep.
of really deep historical significance as well.
Deep historical significance. And then you have some of the smaller ones that are underrated, like Tula in Hidalgo. I don't know if you've been there. Um,
Have that.
yeah, so it's a ton of places. We're exploring the audience's minds. Like Mexico is really where it's at. It's more than you know. It's richer than you know.
Well, I think last I heard there's almost 2 million Americans living in Mexico full time.
I think I did read that earlier in the year, like summertime, they said that. I don't know how many are full time, but I did see that number as well.
It's a large number, and there's a reason for that. Especially, another thing that when I'm looking at helping people with like choosing where they should be in the globe, Mexico is always a good one for Americans and Canadians because you're also so close to home. You're in the
Yep.
same time zones,
Hmm.
and you're a short flight from home. And that is important to a lot of people who may have like family, like myself. I've got family in the U.S. Mom and dad are getting a little older, so it's comfortable to be close.
It's
You
a
know,
comfortable place to live. That's something else. I'm glad you brought that up, Steve. I mentioned to my clients because sometimes when it is their first time relocating, you have parents, you have siblings that maybe are still in school, holiday season. Maybe you feel like you want to be able to get home easier for Christmas, Thanksgiving, birthdays, things of that nature. For me, for example, in Querétaro, I'm a 2 hour direct flight to Texas. So I can get to Dallas very easy, Houston very easily, San Antonio. So for a lot of my clients who are in that area or their families are in that area, it's a direct flight. And that makes people feel good. And I know as you were in the Playa Cancun area, if you're in that Florida area, straight flight home, you know. So it does give that sense of I'm not too far away should something happen.
Exactly. And with me, like I'm prior military, so my VA hospital of record is in Houston. From
Oh,
here, I think it's an hour and 10-minute flight.
you're like an hour, yeah. Because sometimes I
Yeah,
fly through Monterey. You're an hour away.
yeah. It's easy just to jump up there. And so, like, I went up there to have my shoulder looked at. I thought I might need surgery and after a bunch of consultations or whatever, but it made it so much easier just to, fly back and forth, make the appointments. And so that's another thing, retirees, especially the military or whatever, if they need to get back to the States, for certain medical procedures or within their insurance, it's a really quick flight.
It is. It is. And for those who are not military and are retirees and wondering about how is the healthcare here, I can speak to the private healthcare here. And again, I'm based in Querétaro. The private healthcare is excellent. You do have doctors who speak both English and Spanish. So if that is a concern for you, that can be something that's eased. A lot of the hospitals here in Querétaro are new. So you do have top of the line medical equipment because that's something that does come up with my client wanting to know.
Oh, for sure. Especially with retirees. It's
Yes,
good to know that
what you're
you've
getting
got,
yourself into.
right. Well, it's important, especially as people get older. Like
Yeah,
the medical facilities here in Monterey, especially around the San Pedro area, but it's absolutely top notch. Like I went
yep,
to a couple doctors there, um, for my shoulder. And again, it's just so cheap. Like I priced the surgery here because I was like, okay, there's travel to the U.S. to get stuff
yeah.
done at the VA, which is free for me, but there's hassle. So I'm like, just out of curiosity, what the price difference was. And in the U.S., if I had to pay for it privately, it was like 25, 30,000.
Oh gosh.
And here with a top flight orthopedic surgeon that, works with the athletes and everything else,
Mm-hmm.
it was less than 5,000
Yeah,
if I wanted to pay for it.
yeah.
So, and we're not talking some back alley Tijuana doctor.
No,
We're
no, no,
talking
no, no. We're
top of the
talking
food
like top
chain.
grade medical equipment, high level
Yep.
medical professionals. Yeah,
It's absolutely surprising to me when you start looking at the prices of medical care in the US compared to, not just Mexico, but anywhere. When I went to
yeah,
Colombia to get my teeth done, and it was literally 20% of the cost or less,
yeah,
depending on where you got quoted in the US. And
yeah.
again, like if you go to a high-end dentist in like someplace like Medellin, it's like a spa treatment. It's brand new. It's luxury. The waiting room, everything is top flight, newest equipment, everything across the board. So it's more of an experience, not even so much just clinical,
Yeah.
and at a fraction of the price. And you can get, a lot of people when I talk to them about that in the U.S., they think something completely different.
Yeah.
As far as like medical care and what the services might be like, and it obviously
Yeah, you can find
the
anything you're looking for
you can
any
find
price.
anything. Right, right. I had a funny story. I had weirdly enough, I got a piece of chicken stuck in my esophagus. So it wasn't affecting my breathing, but it was stuck and could not get it out. Could not throw up, could
Right.
not swallow. It was 100% blocked off, which is
Wow.
really weird. I'm like, really, all the stuff I've done in my life, military, everything else, I'm gonna die from a piece of chicken. I'm like, what the hell?
This is the
And
way
it
you
got,
blow out, Steve.
yeah, this is it. Like I never would have picked this, but I, it was kind of an emergency sort of situation because I've been
Yeah.
trying to get out. Finally, I was like, okay, this is 24 hours in the Caribbean with no water. I'm feeling flushed, dehydrated. I'm like, I need something now. So I had a friend of mine call around and found a gastro guy that was open. It was out in like Mexico, away from the center of Playa,
Hmm.
like out. And that was what like people think about. It was I
Uh,
walked in, they had like storage boxes here, operating table here, coffee break stuff right next to the operating table. They had everything. But it was a pretty simple procedure. They had to put me out, go down with the camera, punch
Pull
it
it
out,
out.
and
Yeah.
but walked in, got everything done, anesthesia, the procedure, and the doctor was laughing, and he was like, he showed me on the computer afterwards, like, here's your chicken. He's like, remember next time you're not a boa constrictor. I was like, thanks, doc. But it was $300 in and out.
Yeah. For a procedure.
Yeah, including anesthesia and
Yeah.
everything else. And what Gatorade never tasted so good. It really did.
Oh my
It
gosh.
was well, Asha, I really appreciate the conversation. I think if people are thinking of moving to Mexico, that would provide a lot of value. And if you are thinking of moving to Mexico, reach out. Mexpat Dreamers, I'm sure she would be more than happy to help you. And you are a wealth of information as well. So
Thank you. It's been a pleasure
appreciate
to
you coming
speak
on.
today. I think we both have a love for Mexico and we live abroad and can offer so much value to people considering so. So thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. I hope to speak to you again soon.
Yes.